Hello, welcome. This is Journey to Positive Choices. Today, Sharon, my wife, has joined us again. I'm very happy to have her on the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about transition. Sharon, what is transition?
I believe it's a period of change or something you're going through, a difficult time in your life where you may be struggling, you may be going over a lot of hurdles and you don't know how to get over them, and you need God's help, and you need to lean on Him and go to Him and His Word to help you through it.
It's a time you may feel lost in your life. You may feel like you don't have any direction, or things just are very confusing. And I think during transition or different seasons, we get like that.
Yeah, but I think we need to think of it as you're not lost. Look at it like I'm learning my way.
That's a good way to put it. If we look to God to help us through these times, He's going to help us learn our way.
That's correct.
And I think a good example in the Bible of transition or seasons or change, a person that went through a lot, is Moses.
Yes, Moses went through a lot of transitions.
In Exodus 2, it takes us through when Moses was born and he was put into the Nile River all the way to the point where he meets his wife and he gets married. So let's talk about that transition in his life. So Moses was born, and this was during the time of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh wanted all the firstborn males killed.
That's correct.
So Moses' mom and dad decided they were going to put him in a basket.
Put him in a basket and put him in the Nile River and let him just float down, and they were hoping that someone would find him and take care of him.
And the Nile River was not just a beautiful river. The Nile River was pretty wild. It was known to have hippos and crocodiles and a lot of wild things in it. But Moses' mom and dad were relying on God to take care of him.
That's correct. And then as he was floating down the river, Pharaoh's daughter evidently was there, and she heard the baby crying. So she goes and gets the basket, and she opens it up and realizes it's a baby, and it's a Hebrew baby. It wasn't Egyptian. And of course, she was taught her whole life to despise Hebrew people. So her taking this Hebrew baby back to the palace to where her father was, Pharaoh, that's something that was a God thing.
God changed her heart when she saw Moses.
Yes. And it turns out to be a beautiful story, because Moses needed someone to nurse him. So she sent her servant, which was Moses' sister.
So Pharaoh's daughter, she takes Moses to the palace, needs somebody to nurse Moses, and it was Moses' sister that actually worked for Pharaoh's daughter.
Well, she said that, hey, I can go find someone to nurse the baby, and so Pharaoh's daughter told her to do this. So she goes and gets Moses' mother, which Pharaoh's daughter didn't know who Moses' mother was. So here she gets to come back to her baby and nurse this child for 3 years, and then she gets paid for it.
So she puts Moses in the Nile, hoping that someone will find him and take care of him and save his life. Pharaoh's daughter finds Moses, takes him in. Moses' sister works for Pharaoh's daughter, she goes and gets Moses' mom to come to the palace and live for 3 years and nurse Moses and get paid for it.
That's correct.
So that's a God thing. But she got to take care of her son for 3 years.
Yes, she did.
And, you know, we think about things that are happening in our life today, you know, and where these transitions have brought us and what we're going through. And I mean, just the very beginning of Moses' life, that he's already going through a lot of transition and change in his life. You know, and a lot of times when we go through these things, we don't recognize or we don't see until later some of the things that God has done for us. You know, God can redeem today the lessons we missed along the way. And I think he does that in this example of Moses' life.
And remember, it's always on God's timeline, not ours. Even though we get a little impatient, we don't want to wait, but it is God's perfect time.
That's right. And a lot of times we want to try to push that, and when we do, it just makes things worse. But back to Moses, I mean, Moses grew up as an Egyptian.
Yes, he did.
But Moses knew that he was a Hebrew.
He knew. It doesn't really tell in the Bible how he knew he was a Hebrew, but he knew he was a Hebrew.
And sometimes, you know, maybe Moses' mom, the 3 years that she was helping raise him, taught him some things about the Hebrew way.
Could have been.
But Moses grew up, and God was helping take care of Moses during this time, and he grew up as an Egyptian, even though he was Hebrew. And one day Moses saw an Egyptian beating on a Hebrew, one of Moses' people, the Hebrew people.
Yes.
And Moses went down to the Egyptian and stopped him and killed him. And he buried that Egyptian in the sand.
That's correct.
But Moses didn't know it, but there was an Egyptian person that saw him kill the Egyptian and bury him, and he ran to Pharaoh.
That's right. And Pharaoh wanted to have him killed.
And so Moses now is going to go through another season of transition or change, and Moses has to flee to Midian.
That's correct.
He has to run away from Pharaoh because Pharaoh is going to have him killed.
That's correct.
So he's running, he's tired, he's hungry, and once he comes up to Midian,
which this took him a long time to get there.
Well, yeah, because he's on a long trip.
Yes, it didn't happen overnight.
Yeah, he's fleeing
He's been
from
running
Pharaoh,
a long time.
and he's been running, and he's tired. And when he gets to Midian, he finds the water well. And
yes.
What does the water well stand for?
Well, it symbolizes as a place of access and supply, and it's also a place of community where you gather with people. And at this time, Moses needed all three of those.
He did.
And in Isaiah 43, 18 and 19, it says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland."
And God took care of Moses. He brought him to Midian. He brought him to this well. And you know, in times of transition, this verse gives us hope and reassurance that God is continually working and bringing forth new beginnings and new opportunities, even in the midst of uncertainty. You know, and our lives, we're in a time of season or change that's going on. But you know what? We trust in God, and we're trusting that He's going to get us through all this uncertainty, all this unknown that we don't know. We're totally leaning on Him and looking forward to the new beginnings and the new opportunities that He's going to bring us through. And I think that there's a lot of people that may be struggling with some transition and change. And you know, the story of Moses is very encouraging to me, and should be to others, that God will get us through. We just have to rely on Him. And I think there's some other ways that we need to get a grip of the past and embrace the promises of the future.
Well, maybe we need to just sit down at our well and continue to learn and see what we truly need from God. But that means getting in His Word, praying and listening to what He has for us and what He's going to do to help us get through our transition and our time of hardship through our life.
That's right. And a lot of times we don't sit down. We don't listen. We don't pray and read our Bible enough because we're in our lives, we're in turmoil, and so we're
trying to fix it ourselves.
We're trying to fix it ourselves, and
it's not going to work.
No, it actually makes it worse whenever we try to fix it instead of letting God do it.
That's right.
But there are times that God tells us, sit at my well, be still, and drink from my word, and get my nourishment in your life,
That's
not
correct.
Your own nourishment.
That's correct.
So now Moses is at the well. He is getting water. There are people feeding their flocks. And
there's shepherds that's bringing their flock there to feed. And then there were 7 women there, and they their father was a priest at Midian, and they were there to feed their flock. And the shepherds weren't letting them come up to the well to do so. So Moses came to their rescue and helped them water their flock. And so the daughters, they went home and told their father that and it was an Egyptian that helped them, and he said, bring them to the house to eat.
And they never brought Egyptians to the house.
No. This wasn't heard of.
Because Moses had fled, and he's still dressed like an Egyptian.
That's correct. That's correct. But one of the greatest things happened in his life again. He marries one of the daughters.
He goes to the priest's house. The priest accepts him, and Moses' life changes, and he marries one of the daughters.
And they have a son.
And they had a son. You know, if you really look at the story about how, it was very complicated, because when Moses left, he left as a murderer. Mm-hmm. And he ran for a long time across the desert and hills, and he was in hiding.
And you know it probably wasn't no easy trip.
No, it was a hard trip. And that's why when he got to Midian, he was just tired. And he was probably thinking about his past, how everything is complicated, and he can't even go back and see his family.
But look how God's taking it and using his past and turning it into something wonderful.
It's the same in our lives today.
And he's going to use it for his glory.
No matter what you're going through, no matter how difficult or how hard that struggle is, God can take the complicated past. He can take something that you're going through, and he can transition it and use it to his glory.
Yes.
He can always guide us and help us through all of our frustrations, all the things that we're going through. And as we're sitting here talking, I'm thinking about we're going into a season of change in America. I mean, we're going through an election, and there's tons of transition and seasons, different things happening that we don't know what's going to happen.
No, but we have to lean on God and pray that God's going to take care of the situation, and He's going to put someone in over our country that's going to lean on Him and help guide them through this whole election.
And we as Christians should lean on God to guide us through these times.
Yes, and even with the holidays coming back, Thanksgiving, Christmas, that's a hard time for a lot of people.
Yes.
And
I mean, now we're going to add the holidays on top of all of this other stuff. And you're right, it is a very difficult time for a lot of people. But you know what? With God, He can help us through all these changes, all these frustrations, all these times of hurt, of suicidal thoughts, of family grumbles, whatever you have going on in your life. God can help us through that. I mean, look at Moses, at what he came through. And we
hadn't even covered half of Moses.
No, we just started on Moses. And look at all the transition and all the change that he's gone through. Let's look at our lives. 20 years. And I'm very happy to say it's been a great 20 years.
Yes.
But we've went through a lot
of transitions
in
our life.
And a lot of change.
But with God's grace and mercy, look how far we've come.
That's right. He's brought us through these times.
That's correct.
And you know what? He can do that for anybody.
Yes.
If you have Him as your Savior, He can help you through anything. Isaiah 41:10 says this. It says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you with my righteous right hand." What
more could anyone want right there?
That's right. God is sitting here telling us that
He's got this.
He's got it. All we have to do is let Him hold us with His hand. And He will. Now, a lot of times we get off of His hand. And things don't go right. And today, I think Sharon and I, one of the things that we want you to know is that no matter what's going on in your life, you can always come back to God. You can come to Him and accept Him as your Savior. If you are a Christian and you've fallen away, you can always come back to Him and ask for forgiveness.
Yes.
And He will help you.
He will get you back on track.
I enjoy talking about Moses, and I know we've got a lot more to come on Moses, but just this part, I hope that today you have a thought of letting God guide you and get you through the transition and the hard times in your life. If you'd like to write to us, you can go to www.journey2positivechoices.com. That's journey, the number 2, positivechoices.com. We love to hear your story about your transition or how God has helped you through your, things in your life. If you would like to donate or be a sponsor of the Journey to Positive Choices program, you can go to that website and there's a place there to do that. I thank you, and Sharon, thank you for being here, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you guys have a great day.